Welcome to a very sad episode of Why Blank Lost for
No!
Survivor 45. I'm David Bloomberg, and I also want to know what the hell, guys?
What the
Because
hell, guys?
they
No,
voted out
listen.
my winner prediction,
I
and
know.
and that voice you hear is joining me as always. Is of course my co-host, who would never stoop to gloating, Jessica
And
Lewis.
you know what? We're not going to do that. You will get all of the gloating because for once in I don't know how many years of us doing this together, I can finally sit here and say, your winner pick went home, my winner pick stayed, and it was between the two of them, which
Yes,
made it
that's true.
so much more exciting. Now, listen, not to say I love Kellie. I'm sad that Kellie left. So I'm celebrating your loss, but not Kellie leaving. I want that to be very
Oh,
clear,
okay.
like that I
Okay.
can be like, thank you, Survivor gods, finally giving me this moment because you've been really, I mean, you picked the winner last season.
Last
You did
season,
it a couple
I
seasons
was
before that.
I was pretty sure I was hitting two in a row here. I got to tell you.
Ugh, no, I just have to say that part of this makes me happy. And I
Mm,
do want to gloat, but I am also very sad because Kellie was awesome. She was great. And she was incredible TV. She was an incredible Survivor player. There's a lot of things we'll have to talk about. But we also get to remind everyone that she was your winner pick.
yeah, at least so I'm going to do what so many survivors do when they come out and say, "Well, at least they took her out because she was going to win otherwise."
She was a
So
huge threat.
no jumping ahead.
Oh my gosh, yes, we
Yeah,
can't jump ahead.
no jumping ahead.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's the Monday morning quarterbacking where everyone's like, well, that's why they took me out. And there is a
Yes.
lot to discuss with Kellie. There is
And
a
sometimes it's true,
reason.
but the thing is, usually the people who say that as their final words weren't taken out as a threat because they
Right.
don't feel the
Right.
need to. That happened on, I was talking about that about UK Survivor UK. One of the people that was taken out was, well, they took me out because I was a threat, and it's like, yeah, you're
Mm,
the fourth person out. You weren't taken out because you were a threat. I'm sorry.
right. Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, but no matter how sad I am to be talking about Kellie now instead of in my Why Blank Lost podcast. Sorry, that makes no sense the way I said it. Instead of the Why Blank One podcast. See, I'm
See,
so distraught.
you are
I'm
so
I'm
distraught.
I'm so distraught I can't even speak right. Uh,
That's okay because we still get to talk potentially about why Jake won.
yeah, that's not happening. Let's be
Oh,
let's be
come
real here.
on.
I love Jake. There's no way on God's green earth that man is winning.
I
I'm sorry.
disagree.
Okay.
I wholeheartedly disagree with
Okay,
that.
well, we'll discuss that later because,
Oh,
uh,
because I do seem to recall last season, uh, you know, well, no, not last season. What I can't
mhm.
keep all the seasons straight, but there have been a few shocking winners. I'll just leave it at that. Like,
Oh
there's been
yeah,
shocking
no, I
winners.
fully admit we did a podcast,
Yes,
before the final six for Survivor 41, and I said we don't even need to discuss Erica; she can't win. And then, when we were talking about, was it 43? 43. And
mm-hmm,
I said Gabler can't win, and
mm-hmm.
so yeah, it's occasionally happened. But
So,
I am telling you,
and he is
I am
not a
absolutely
game.
100% telling you, Jake cannot win. And Jake, I'm sorry. I
That's
really am.
very
I like you,
strong.
Jake, but no, you can't.
I think Jake is awesome. I am
I think he's
enjoying him.
awesome.
I'm
Yeah,
enjoying him immensely.
yes, I am too. He can't win.
Uh,
So
maybe he can't win just because he's my winner pick. Is that what it
well,
is?
I mean, that's a good part of it. Yeah, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so,
Jake, I've
but
got your back.
I have his back. It's just it
You
says
are
he can't
very.
win.
It's like,
Uh,
have you been spoiled in some fashion? You can't be
I
so
watched
certain
the
that he will never
episodes.
win.
I watched the episodes.
Yeah.
There's just no way. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
and just like you watch the episodes with Gabler and you watch the episodes with Erica, and then they
I
both
know.
won. You just said it yourself that
I
you were
know.
like, they can never win. So,
I know.
Jake, you heard it here
But
first.
we've
All right.
learned more since then. So
Mm-hmm. Well,
so
All right. Well, we can talk about Kellie. We'll just save the Jake talk for when we get to why Jake won.
Sure, or within the next 2 weeks. But as far as Kellie, we will follow our usual path, comparing her game to my rules for winning that I originally wrote way back after season 1 and have been updating ever since, using all the non-spoiler information available to us from what we saw on TV, interviews, social media, and secret scenes. And the newest version of the rules can, of course, be found on the website by going to our dedicated page, robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed, clicking
Mhm.
on the link bubble that says Survivor Rules. Now, before we get to our discussion of those rules, we will have another argument about whether or not your winner pick can win. No, we already did that. Um,
I was like,
we
oh,
will,
here we go.
yeah. We always have some other things to discuss. So it is time for our regular news update for the Bruce Couture War.
Oh, here we go.
And the thing is, if we had known how long this would be going on, we could have come up with a whole segment name for it, like Bruce and Couture fight about blank.
It
But
could have
it's
been a
too late.
drinking game.
Yeah,
How
yeah,
many times in her confessionals does she talk about Bruce? Which
yes,
is every time.
every time. Yes.
Yeah, that is her like whole storyline.
Yeah.
Is
Unfortunately
her
for her, it
animosity
is.
towards
Yeah.
Bruce. Yeah.
Yes. In any case, the battle between the two of them has been going on for so long while they try to maintain a facade of working with each other. Now, we didn't see as much direct interaction between them this time, so much as comments and looks. Like
Mm-hmm.
when Bruce decided he didn't want to run around to find money in the jungle and Couture celebrated,
Oh,
not
she was so excited.
not knowing what that would start in terms of a chain of events that would set in motion all sorts of things that we'll get to later.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had a great scene where the Rebas wanted to target Bruce, but they also wanted Couture on board. So 3 of them approached her and put on this big show. They were like, "Hey," or she asked them first, "Hey, who are you thinking?" And Drew is like, "Well, really, you know, we're just getting to know you. So we want to earn our trust with you. So you tell us a name." Oh my gosh, she named Bruce. They never saw that coming.
Shocking.
Yeah.
How did
Now,
they not see that coming?
they did. They absolutely saw that coming.
I
It was
know,
all
but
an
that's
act.
what I'm
Oh,
like. But that's like she keeps acting as if no one's going to
right.
know that she
Yes.
despises Bruce, and it's like,
Yeah.
we all knew that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. You're wearing a
how
sign that says
how
that. Yeah.
shocking, how
Yeah.
surprising.
Now,
Like nobody knew.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Julie is a secret lawyer, but from her specialty, I don't think she deals with trials very much. But
Mm.
I would think she is very well aware of something that you also know very well. Never ask a witness a question if you don't know how they'll answer.
Oh, that is rule number one. Yes.
Yes.
Don't ask a
Uh,
question you don't know the answer to.
yes. And they followed that perfectly. They asked her the question and they already knew what the answer was going to be.
And it was fantastic. Yes.
Yes. Now,
But I also just want to say too, just a little like aside, the whole, Bruce and Couture thing. I do have to appreciate. I think it was Mike Bloom that tweeted about how like we've made it this far and they have yet to have an opportunity to vote for each other because of the way everything has been like lining up. And
mhm.
it's hysterical because every tribal council they've been separated. Now he didn't have a vote. He's got immunity. I mean, there's all of these things that keep getting in the way. So she cannot. The moment she can
It's
write Bruce's name down, I think she might pass out. And when she's actually like having that opportunity to write his name and like display it, she might just lose her mind.
it's like a sitcom where it's like I'm gonna, and then they go out the
Yes.
window and then they go out the this and and it's yeah.
Yeah, it is quite entertaining. So thank you for that entertainment, Tora and Bruce. We
Yeah.
very much enjoy it.
Yes. Now, with that said, it was entertaining, but of course, Bruce lost his vote in the auction. And I want to talk a little bit about the auction here because, like many others, I was excited to see it return.
Yes.
And there was this initial euphoria,
Mm-hmm.
but I really didn't like what Jeff did with it. And I know this has been discussed on other podcasts already, like Know It Alls, but I wanted to bring it up here because even my son noticed it. Now, for those who may not remember, he is a New Era fan. He has never seen a
Mm-hmm.
Survivor auction before. He didn't like go back and watch all the old seasons. He is a fan from 41, and that's it. That's what
Yep.
he's watching. So he saw this, came in with no expectations, no memories of old. Um, and without prompting, he messaged me, "This auction is so dumb. It's just encouraging everyone to spend all their money immediately and not do a bidding war so they don't lose their vote instead of trying to get multiple things."
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yep.
What was the point of running around in the jungle to find all that money when Dee was just going to blow $900 on a single milkshake because she didn't want to lose her vote? As just one example.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree at all. I think that you had an or well, I shouldn't say you. Survivor had an opportunity, right? Like, oh, here's the auction. Here's something we've all been waiting for. We've
Mm-hmm.
been really excited. The fact that he took the advantages out of it, I think, was probably enough of a shift and a change. I do appreciate that they had to run around and find the
Yeah.
money. I think that makes it much more fun because then, yes, you do have people like Dee who has $900
Right.
and Bruce who has 80. So you're certainly affecting their ability to bid on things. But and even I can even slightly appreciate the when I'm going to stop. There are 15 items, and at some point, I'm going to
Yeah.
get to this number and you won't know. And so I can appreciate that too, that like there's
Mm-hmm.
this like impending doom that it could end at any time. Now granted, every other Survivor auction, Jeff has just been like, that's it, we're done. So
Yeah.
that impending doom always existed. You never knew when it was going to be done.
Right.
But now he played with it a little bit. I can appreciate that too. But I completely agree that what they ended up doing. And Kendra immediately, what did she do? She was like, of course, I'm going to bid all of my
Yeah.
money on the first
Yeah.
thing I see because my vote is the most important thing. I'm really hoping that Jeff is learning from all of the kvetching that we are doing about taking away people's votes. That it's one of my favorite words. But
No, no,
that
no, no. I'm giving you that look with your suggestion that Jeff might be learning.
oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe he's not. I'm hoping he is because the vote is the most important thing you have, like your vote.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they are just taking it away from people at the drop of a hat
Mm-hmm.
for no reason, I just find it to be absurd. Let people play the game. And we saw a direct consequence of
Yeah.
someone losing their vote on this particular episode because now the numbers are thrown off
Right.
and the ability to vote and who has a vote and who doesn't have a vote. Stop it. Stop.
Yes.
We
Yes.
like the game being played and people being allowed to play the game. And when you take their vote away, they lose their voice.
Yeah. I mean, Jeff, as he so often does, overcorrected. There were
Mm-hmm.
many ways to fix the auction. I think we
Yes.
talked about some of them last season.
Mm-hmm.
But Jeff changed two things and they worked against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One, they got rid of advantages, like you said. I think that was the main thing he wanted to accomplish because people would just hold all their money for advantages and that took the fun away.
Right.
Okay. Now, far be it from you and I, of all people, to criticize fewer advantages. So, that's fine. But it was a reason to hold on to your money and bid wisely. It wasn't
Yes.
the only reason. You might want different food. Maybe you didn't want beer and pretzels.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you didn't just want a milkshake. Maybe you
Right.
wanted to bid on fish eyes or,
The
whatever. But
biggest fish eyes I've
yeah,
ever seen.
yes. But then he drops in the part, like you just said, he is obsessed with taking people's votes away.
Yeah.
And, it's basically it was random that Bruce lost his vote. That's
Mm-hmm.
basically what it was.
Yes.
And
I think that's a great point.
yeah. And so if there had been an advantage somewhere and people wanted to risk it by holding on to their money, then it might have been an interesting situation. It's kind of like a beware advantage. People
Right.
still open those. If
Right.
Jeff
You
said
have a
there's
choice.
right. If Jeff said there's an advantage coming, but you don't know when I'm going to stop this and you may get stuck with your money,
Mm-hmm.
then leave it up to them to make that decision.
Yes. I don't disagree.
Right. And but instead they just threw their money away.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the best solution was to not have the lose a vote and just have it end without notice. Like, like you said.
Right. And
They
that's
could,
the thing, because it's a choice. There
yeah,
needs, if you are going to be potentially losing your vote, it needs to be attached to a choice that you make. This was not a choice because
right.
it was just, I'm going to
There
bid
was nothing he could
$900.
do.
He had $80.
Yeah.
So, like, how is he going to outbid someone with $80? And so you've taken away the whole purpose of having them run around and collect money, because now you're guaranteeing the person who has the least amount of money has the least amount of power to actually
Mm-hmm.
negotiate and get something. Yeah, I don't like it at all. I'm
Yeah.
very
I mean,
disheartened by the choice.
yeah, if they didn't have the lose a vote, then Bruce would have still been penalized because he barely would have been able to vote for anything. And that's
Mm-hmm.
probably what he thought, or not vote for, or buy anything.
Buy anything. Yeah.
Um, that's probably what he thought. He was like, whatever.
Right.
But he had no idea that the true impact this was going to cause, and it shouldn't have.
Right. No, I
So,
don't disagree.
all
I
right.
don't disagree at all.
All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to discuss before we move on to our regular segment here?
No, I think we've complained enough.
Well, not enough, because it's time for our Jeff Probst is wrong about blank segment. Now, I could just obviously just reference what we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I also want to mention something that seems minor, but I didn't like the way Jeff handled it. So he said on his On Fire podcast that he never lies to players.
Yeah,
Yes.
we've
He
talked about that.
Yes, and he acknowledged that some of us, surprised he didn't name us, said he did it with the hourglass. But then he just kind of brushed over it. He made this excuse to try to
Mm-hmm.
claim he didn't. Oh, no,
Yeah.
I may mislead. I may do it, blah, blah, blah. No, Jeff, you lied. You
Mm-hmm. You
effing
did.
lied. We called it
Mm-hmm.
out at the time. It's still true. The fact that he refuses to acknowledge this just bugs me. Admit you made a mistake, move on. I mean, you've already moved on. You essentially admitted it was a mistake by not having it anymore. And I think you even
Right.
said
That's fair.
in the podcast, yeah, that was not a good twist.
Right.
Don't try to cover it up now. Why does he need to even say anything about that? I don't even understand it.
No, and I will say, Jeff, I still love you. Just know all
Yes.
of my complaints, I still love you. But yes, this is something that we delved into. We talked about it a lot. And I truly believe that it seemed to be agreed upon by a significant number of Survivor watchers, even Survivor players,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I don't know, Danny, who was there and experienced it.
Yes.
So I feel like you're taking away what the players actually went through by not acknowledging what they actually went through,
Mm-hmm.
because I think Danny was the most vocal about it when it happened, after it happened, since it's happened. And you really do need to look at the people who experienced it to truly understand, oh, maybe that's really how it did come across. Maybe
Right.
Jeff thought that that wasn't what he was doing, but what do we say all the time? Perception is reality,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those same exact
Right.
circumstances. And that's how it was perceived, and that's how it appeared, and that's what it was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. Well, I, of course, have a few other thoughts, but those will be or already have been in TikTok. So people can check those out at David Bloomberg TV. But before we see how Kellie did, we do need to mention that the rules we're about to discuss come in a shorter and much more colorful form as a poster.
yes,
So
they
go
do.
to robhasawebsite.com/YXLostFeeds, scroll down to the poster, click on it, order it, get it, hang it up.
That's right.
Take pictures
Holidays.
of it.
Holidays
Post it
are
on
coming.
Twitter. Yes.
That's right.
Yes. And you can also get the poster on a t-shirt. So you just keep scrolling down and order that.
Mhm.
And you scroll down further and you get the checklist t-shirt. So,
Right.
so you can get any of those at our YX Lost feed page.
And the thing that we failed to mention with the checklist is it's a front and back. So you have
Yes, that is
the
true.
Y blank lost in the front and then Y blank won in the back. So you get both sides.
That's right. And you usually see me wearing it backwards during the Y blank one podcast. So,
Yes,
so
worth a mention.
yes.
Just like your winner pick went out. Oh
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no knowledge of what you're saying.
my gosh.
All right. Well,
Oh my
Kelly seemed
word.
to be in a great position. She had an ally with an idol who was willing to play it for her if needed.
Hmm?
Plus, he was a big shield who would distract from her. She had another ally running around looking for idols and going crazy. She had relationships with players from the other original starting tribes, and everyone wanted to work with her. This
Mhm.
is what survivor dreams are made of.
Yeah, right?
But sometimes dreams turn into nightmares with brutal
Mm.
blindsides in them. How did it all change so quickly and without her seeing it coming? It's time to figure out why Kelly lost.
Yes. Yes, we must figure out why your winner pick
Yes,
lost.
she has a name. Uh,
Kelly, I think you're fantastic, but I just, this will be the entire podcast. I'm letting you know. It's my sure, just like, it's just enjoyment, sheer joy.
I'm glad you're happy.
I can hear the excitement you have for me.
Yes,
It's so
yes,
apparent.
yes, it is. It is. You're right. Yay. All right. Well, the
Love
first
it.
and most important rule is to scheme and plot, and it's clear that Kelly was well aware of the necessity to do so. She was in multiple alliances. She was the glue that held Bello together. She was sought after by others as an ally. She was an important figure in the season thanks to the amount of sway she held. I don't think there's anyone who would disagree with that. However, a well known historical figure once said, with great power comes great responsibility. And part of that was the responsibility of figuring out when to get rid of Bruce.
Yeah.
So I considered whether to discuss this here or in the second rule because some people have suggested it was over scheming to keep him. But I think it's a discussion of what kind of scheming it was instead. And
Interesting.
plus, spoiler alert, I don't think it was over scheming. So let me set it up here. I've seen a lot of people saying this outcome showed Kelly should have gotten rid of Bruce last week in the split tribal council. This is so much 2020 hindsight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. First of all, Kelly knew unequivocally she was in no danger from him. How often can you say that in Survivor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Plus, as she told Rob in his interview, it was smart to keep Bruce in the game because he was so loyal and probably would have played his idol on her if he knew they were coming for her. And he was a vote she could direct as long as it was at the right people. And having an extra vote advantage is always a good thing.
Yeah.
So right there, we have a few positives for keeping him around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do feel like it's a dangerous thing to find yourself with that much power, because I do think the quote that you provided is very particularly relevant. But you have to weigh the cost benefit, right? And
Right.
even though she was taking that burden on, knowing how much people were not keen of Bruce was something she had to manage. And so that's a stressor, because you have to kind of
Right.
be the go between. You have to smooth out the relationships. You have to convince other people, no, 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 now's not the time for Bruce, because he's a benefit to you, not a benefit to them. And you have to make sure that you don't present it in that
Yeah.
fashion either. So it is a very, very fine line for her to have walked. And she was doing it fantastically well, because most of the time people would be like, oh, well, there's an obvious duo, so we need to get rid of her second because that's why she wants him around. And nobody took it that way. Nobody said, oh my gosh, Kelly wants him to stick around because she's controlling him and he's going to
Right.
be her extra vote. She did such a great job maintaining that relationship in the way that she did, that it was incredible strategy, incredible scheming, 100% for
Yeah.
sure.
Nobody said that until very recently.
Until very
Yeah.
recently, yes.
Yeah. Now I want to look at some of the things that there was no way Kelly could predict. Last episode, Kelly had no reason to suspect she would be the backup target.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It would take pretty much exactly the combination of things that occurred here. Bruce gets immunity. Jake might or might not have immunity. Bruce, the person I just called her extra vote, loses his vote. If
Mm-hmm.
all those things don't happen, this week is a very different outcome.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And
I mean,
this again is why there needs to be some type of a realization by the survivor producers
mm,
that there are certain decisions that you make that can have a detrimental impact on people's games, like taking votes away from people.
but I don't think they will. They had a
Probably
whole
not.
they had a whole big party in New York City to promote this.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and people have been calling it the best episode of the season, the best episode of the new era. And so
Mm-hmm.
to their minds, I mean, because their goal is to make TV, um,
Yeah.
they don't see a problem with it.
Yeah.
Um, but another problem with this hindsight is that even if she did want to vote out Bruce last week, he was already telling Kelly that he suspected Kendra was up to something, which she was.
Mm-hmm.
And she was not good at keeping things secret. So if Kelly said, okay, Kendra, you're right, let's do it, he could have easily noticed and played his idol if she hadn't gotten Kendra to count him down. And
Mm-hmm.
if he did play his idol, the votes could have rebounded just about anywhere, including probably not onto Kelly, but onto Kendra, who is Kelly's
Yeah.
closest ally, according to her interviews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, well, and this is why it's a very tricky strategy to try to maintain, just because you are dealing with so many variables and people,
Right.
and she's trying to control relationships between individuals
Mm-hmm.
who have opposing interests. And I do think that she was playing the middle a lot in
Yeah.
this game and playing it very well, but then to her detriment, because it was becoming apparent, as you've already mentioned, that this
Mm-hmm.
is what was happening, and they were realizing the power that she was wielding because of it. So yeah, it's a hard game to play, and I think that unfortunately for her, the other half of her like duo was someone that like that everyone wanted to vote out. If it had been someone different, maybe,
Right.
we'd be having a different discussion, but it was Bruce. And
Yeah.
Bruce brings with him all of the stuff,
Yes.
Katora and people wanting to target him and him being the potential first vote and all of those things. So, yes, that is a very tricky person to keep as your number two in order to control him in this way.
Right. But here's the other question, because I'm sure there are people out there who will say, well, Kelly should have gotten rid of him sooner. And you talked about, well, he's a difficult person to keep. I don't know when. And it adds
Yeah,
even more hindsight into it. I mean,
right.
they didn't lose a challenge. They did not, they, as a tribe, they did not lose a challenge at all when she was with him
Right.
before the merge. So what was she going to do? Throw a challenge?
Yeah.
If she had done that, we would have called her crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
really? You hate
Yeah.
Bruce so much that you want to throw a challenge?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it just I don't know when she could have done it and it would have benefited her.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's kind of like that, jumping the shark kind of thing. Like you do it
well,
just too soon.
yeah. I mean, it's like you see the winning lottery numbers and you go, ah, damn it, I was gonna play those numbers. Were you
Right.
really?
Yeah.
Because that's a one in whatever chance, and it's
Yeah.
like, and yeah, you know, she hit the reverse lottery, the negative
Yeah.
lottery of
Yeah,
things that
because so many
happened there.
things, right. So many things lined up that ended up making her the target as
Right.
opposed to things continuing down the path that they were. I mean, even if Bruce is continuously the target of the other people
Mm-hmm.
around her, and she's able to maintain this structure, like, well, he's not a threat to us, so just leave him alone. Like he
Yeah.
can stay, it doesn't matter. He's a vote that we can utilize, and you can kind of assure the people you're playing the game with, we're good, this is fine, we're solid. I'm curious though if I know that she didn't really mention this much, but she did throw his name out there with the women, right? Where they were like discussing this idea of voting Bruce out. And that might have taken away some of her ability to maintain that structure, because she was also then talking about voting Bruce out as well, which
I mean,
perhaps made people question a little bit.
I think her goal was to have them question and say, "Oh, she's not tight with Bruce."
Sure.
And also, that was early in the episode. That was before they knew he, had
Oh
won
yeah.
immunity.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they, if he hadn't won immunity, I think they would have struck in this episode. But he did, and he was
Mm-hmm.
able to hold something longer than other people. Um, so
He had
yeah,
all his energy saved up because he
that's
didn't run
right.
around collecting all of the money for
That's
the
right.
auction.
That must have been it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what Kelly did say, and specifically, she had mentioned it to Dalton. She may have mentioned it to others. That her real regret is not targeting Drew last week,
Mm-hmm.
and she said that she tried a little bit and got pushback. Unfortunately, she didn't say who that pushback was from, and Dalton didn't
Mm-hmm.
ask it as a follow-up question, because if she had wanted to, she, Kendra, and Bruce could have voted for Drew. And as long as Seafood didn't vote with Drew and Emily, it would have worked. So if they told Drew and Emily, yeah, we're going along with your plan,
Mm-hmm.
then they would have voted Seafood. These three would have voted for Drew, and it wouldn't have mattered where Seafood voted. Um,
Right.
Now, this makes me think that the pushback came from Bruce or Kendra, maybe most likely Kendra, since she got to know him on their swap tribe. Although now that I'm
Mm.
thinking about it, I wonder, because she also said she tried to work with Emily.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
wonder if, not realizing how close to Drew Emily was, that she proposed it to Emily and Emily gave the
Mm.
pushback. But the thing was,
That makes the most sense.
she didn't need Emily.
Yeah,
She,
but again, I feel
yeah,
like part of her struggle was that she was trying to maintain
right.
that middle ground. And if she's talking to someone like Emily and Emily isn't too keen on this
Yeah,
idea, she also wants to buy in with Emily and she wants
right.
Emily to buy in with her. And so it is, again, it's a very hard balance to strike, because you're like, okay, well, I want this person to work with me. And I don't want to come in too hot and
Mm-hmm.
push too hard for this particular person, because then all eyes are going to be on me. And I feel like we see that a lot now, where people are very hesitant to say a name,
Yeah.
except if you're Katora and you get to say Bruce, that's totally different. But for the most part, people are like, oh, no, wait, what were you thinking?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
because you don't want to be the first to name drop. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like she
Which is
was
so dumb.
probably,
By the way, it's so dumb. All you have to do is lie. I mean, like Jake was like, no, I'm not going to name a name. I'm not going to name a name. Someone could have just said, Jake said your name. And he's going to deny it. And you know what? He would have denied it anyway. What? There are no lie detectors in the jungle. Who
that's
cares
fair.
if they actually say the name?
I know. But this is the fear. This is the
I
fear
know.
that exists.
I
And
know.
I'm sure that she probably felt that. And if she really wanted to work with Emily, she was probably very mindful
Yes.
of that. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's just it's like you are looking at benefit,
Mm-hmm.
and what is the long-term reward here that
Right.
I will achieve if I go along with what Emily wants, as opposed to me really pushing for my agenda. So it's all a balance.
Yeah, and I do agree with her. That was probably an error. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people thought so at the time. A lot of people were scratching their heads going, why did you vote out Sifu when Drew was right there?
Yeah.
But we also have to remember, we know how important Drew is, how
Yeah.
central Drew is to what's
Right.
going on. She didn't know that. And she even said in her interviews, she didn't know how tight Austin and Drew were.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, she's dealing with the information that she has, not the
Mm-hmm.
information that we have.
Right. Yeah.
So, all
Absolutely.
right. That was a lot of talk about what Kelly should have done, or supposedly should have done previously. So let's move to this episode finally. It seemed like it was an obvious vote against Jake. But first, Kellie tried to save him because she knew that Jessica would be sad if Jake went home.
That's right.
That's why she did it. She
Thank you,
sacrificed
Kellie.
herself.
I love you, Kellie.
Yes.
This is amazing. Great news.
But she was up against three problems. One, Bruce's lost vote. Two, Jake's nervousness. Three, it appears that Emily was playing her.
Yes.
The first is obvious. The second caused Jake to run around looking for idols and then use a shot in the dark rather than his vote. And the third comes up because Kellie said in her interviews that she thought Emily was in a swing position as the last Lulu, and the two of them were seemingly working together, as we just kind of mentioned, just as they tried to work together to save Caleb a couple episodes ago.
Right.
I'm not sure if Emily really was more in the middle than we've seen, or she just did a really good job of hiding how close she is to Drew and Austin. I think it's the latter.
I think so too. I think so 100%. She has learned how to be a chameleon. And I think she was taught very early on that that's what she needs to do when she is interacting with individuals. And so she's been keeping a lot of Emily concealed and contained. And I think she has done a fantastic job of keeping the Drew Austin relationship under wraps. Yes. And we've seen a few conversations that she's had, very, secret conversations with Drew, letting him know what's going on and informing him. And I do think that she's doing a great job with that.
Yeah. So, but Kellie didn't just have this, attempted working relationship with Emily. She also revealed she had a sort of understanding with Dee. Not an alliance, but more of an agreement to keep each other around for a while as threats. The problem was that when she was talking to Emily and Kendra about who to vote out instead of Jake, Dee's name came up. And that was probably enough for Emily to run it back to her Bello friends. Yeah,
I'm sure.
And she could honestly say Dee's name came up. She didn't have to make it up. Now, incidentally, we've mentioned the Women's Alliance, I think. Yes, we did. And at least I was right in that prediction last week when I said it would amount to nothing. Rob Mosh mentioned on his post-show podcast that he got to talk to Kellie after the special live Tuesday airing in New York. And she said she was surprised because the Women's Alliance was really nothing when they were out there. And even Drew himself said on the show that it wouldn't last because it's so porous when Emily told him. And, we saw Dee and Julie weren't turning on Drew and Austin. Emily wasn't either. So, that didn't leave very many left.
Yeah, it was a nice idea. I think it's fun to say, hey, the women are in the majority and they should band together and take it all the way to the end. But you can't discount the relationships that have already been created early on in the game. And those relationship bonds are going to, I would think, come before any newly formed bond based upon, hey, let's do this all women's alliance thing, even though I haven't built the trust with you that I built with Drew and that I built with Austin. So I do think that becomes a big ask and a big decision that could negatively affect someone's game who has been creating such a close bond with those individuals. So then just kind of get rid of them with the drop of a hat like that. I don't feel like that would have been a great game move for any of them to do, but the idea of it was fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we can move on to the second rule, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Now, we, of course, discussed all the stuff about her decision not to vote out Bruce just a few minutes ago. But there is still something Bruce related that's important here. And that, of course, is the fact that, as you had indicated, she wasn't an obvious duo with him. The problem is that she wasn't the one making it obvious and basically had no control over it.
Right. Yeah.
We heard from her on the show many times. Things like, Bruce keeps telling people he's close to me. And everybody says I'm close to Bruce, which is not my doing. Bruce just follows me around and refuses to let me be free, etc. She also told Rob he was telling people about how he and Kellie were such good friends, including like telling Julie, who's on
Yeah.
Reba, what happened to him refusing to talk to anyone on the other side and getting mad at people for doing that?
Well, if you want to talk about your best bud, Kellie, it doesn't apply.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Kellie is saying things on the show like, working with Bruce is the worst part of my game. Bruce has been dragging my game down. Um, I cannot remember a duo like this in Survivor before. If someone
Yeah.
can, hey, I'm on Twitter. Let
Yeah,
me
let
know.
us know. Please tell us.
One person is like, "You're my number one," and the other person is like, "I want you gone." And so
Yeah.
it's
But I'll
not
keep
healthy.
you around.
Yeah. But the thing is, as much as she would say she didn't want to be with him in the game, actions spoke louder than words. And at least the Reba people did see her as part of the duo with him.
Yeah.
And, we know what happens when sometimes the main target isn't available. They take out the lieutenant.
Yes. And I think the interesting thing between Bruce and Kellie, when you were just looking at them as a duo, the fact that Bruce was immune in this particular vote, I'm still curious if someone would have looked at this and said, but we still should target Kellie and not target Bruce, just because out of the two, Kellie is much more, and I know I'm not going to jump ahead,
Mhm.
but a threat in this game than someone like Bruce. And so Bruce is he's like the safe one to keep around because you don't have to worry about him as much as you have to worry about Kellie. And so there's an interesting dynamic there when you're looking at this as a pair. And the fact that she had more pull and she had more ability and more control of the game than he did, it's just interesting that they were all so kind of focused on Bruce until, well, now he's immune. Well, now we have to go to the other person who would normally be the one you would target before you would
Mhm.
target a Bruce.
Yeah, I think that it was certainly possible. From what we saw, it took Drew several steps to reach this train of thought.
Mm,
But we can't say he wouldn't have done the same thing. He
right,
might have done the same thing anyway, even if
right,
Bruce had not been immune.
right.
So yeah, we can't say either way. But Kellie knew this was all a possibility. She wondered to us on the show,
Yeah,
if Bruce and Jake are safe, am I the last resort contingency vote, or could votes ricochet onto me? And she added
yeah.
to Dalton Ross that she was concerned and tried to avoid that problem, but she couldn't. It still seemed like most people associated Jake more closely with Bruce, but there were other reasons we'll get to, and that one person on this podcast has already gotten to, that made Kellie a better target for them.
Yes. I might have jumped ahead a little bit. My
Maybe.
bad. Wait. Whose
Don't
winner pick is still in the
don't
game?
don't make me do it.
That would be
Don't up. Oh, darn it. Where'd she go? Oh, there she is.
with great power comes great responsibility.
That's true. And I have the responsibility to stop you from saying things like that.
Can't help myself. I'm just so
I
excited.
know.
I'm sorry,
I know.
Kellie. I love you, but I have to take this moment and gloat.
I said at the
Come on,
beginning of the
Jake. Make
podcast
me
that you were too
proud.
good for that.
Oh, I
All
didn't
right.
say that. I said there will be
No, I
gloating.
said I said you were too
I
good
know,
for
and
it.
I said there will be gloating. So I will gloat. I appreciate you thinking I'm too good for that, but
Yeah,
you know what?
it was a hope. All
Yes.
right. Well, the third rule
You're going to
tells players to
shame
be.
me into not gloating.
Yeah, I'm trying. Um, the third rule tells players to be flexible, and we saw Kellie doing an excellent job of this from the beginning of the game, as she and Brando were in the middle of the Bello tribe and could go either with the two men or the other two women. Now, the funny thing is, in her interviews, she said she really didn't do that on purpose.
Right.
Uh, she told Mike Bloom, I didn't initiate any alliance besides one with Kendra early on. Everyone came to me, and I'm like, dude, I'm not going to say no. So I was kind of stuck in this position. Now, first, she was, of course, right not to say no,
Mm-hmm.
because we go back to our Ghostbuster provision in the first rule. When someone asks you if you want to be in an alliance, you say yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And she said yes. But also, that's a really good position to be stuck in.
Yeah.
There's clearly something about Kellie that drew people to her.
Mm-hmm.
And not even just in the game, but for many of us who independently predicted her as the winner. Like, we did our podcast and I said, okay, she's my prediction. And someone's like, oh, that's Mike Bloom's prediction too. And then someone's like, oh, that's
Mm-hmm.
mine too. I had all these people on Twitter being like, yeah, she's my winner prediction
Yeah.
too. It's like something drew us to her. Something
Yeah.
drew people in the game to her. So whether she intentionally put herself in the middle or she just ended up there, it was still smart for her to keep it going.
Yes. And I do think that Kellie's ability to take what was kind of unexpected, she didn't
Mm-hmm.
ask for that position in the game, but she used it to her benefit.
Right.
And then added it to her game. And this is what I think is so nice when we talk about the players who come in with a plan
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, this is what I want to do. And I don't feel like Kellie was someone who, like, she clearly didn't walk in and go, I want to play the middle. No, that's what happened. And you know what? She made it work for her.
Yeah.
And it's a tricky place to be in sometimes. It can be the greatest place to be in at times, to end up being the swing. But I do think that she did have some type of a draw, which gave her so many more options than she would normally have had on a small tribe with only 6. When you are kind of thrust into this position where people are like, I would like to work with you, that is a really great place to be. But she handled it with grace and with like an understanding of what significance came with that and really weighing her options. And it was good that she had Brando that she could really talk things
Right.
through and try to make determinations with what was going to be best. So, yeah, I mean, overall, her ability to be flexible, I think, was really great. She struggled with the Bruce component of it, though. Even though she knew, like, at some point,
Mm-hmm.
like, when I make that decision, she was willing to make the decision. She had to figure out the best time to do it. So it's not that she wasn't being flexible, but I think she was limiting her flexibility a little bit just because she was being a little more selfish with Bruce, but for good reasons.
Right.
So it's a tough, again, it's that balance. You have to try to find it. Like, what's going
Yeah.
to be best for my game, but also I need to continue this idea that we're all in this together and we're making this decision together, as opposed to this is best for me, which she didn't do. So overall, I think she did a
Yeah.
great job.
Yeah. And again, she had these options. If Bello, original Bello, or swapped Lulu had gone to tribal council before the merge, she would have cut Bruce,
Right.
even though he was a tight ally. But
Mm-hmm.
since they didn't, he was still there, which should have been a plus for her
Right.
and would have if not for, all these different and unpredictable things that we discussed in the first rule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I do want to mention that her flexibility continued after the merge. She told Dalton Russ, obviously, I would love a women's alliance. That's my dream scenario. But we're a little bit too far in the game to form a full 6-person women's alliance. But for me, I was just looking at it like I love my options. So I was like, this is
Mm-hmm.
another option for me. I'm not going to shut anybody down.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so she brought up the same things that you did earlier about the women's alliance, but she was in game thinking about these.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And then even beyond that, she wanted still more flexibility. She said in her interviews that kind of the meta of the new era was that original tribes didn't stick together and there were always cross-tribe alliances. And, that may be, but this is still Survivor.
Mm.
People should not just break up solid alliances for no reason.
Right.
And, the Reba 4 have a solid alliance, not to mention adding in Emily.
I
So,
know.
I guess Emily adding in there, that was the cross-tribe alliance. And Kellie just didn't realize how tight they were, that they weren't going to do this breakup cross-tribe thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, was there a crack in original Reba? Yeah, there were 2 cracks, and they both got cracked out of the game. So
That's a new one.
yeah,
You got cracked out of the game.
yeah. So, all right. Well, I think we can move to the 4th rule, which tells players not to let their emotions control them. How do you think Kellie did here?
Oh, I think she did fantastic because, again, she's dealing with the whole Bruce component. And I feel much like Katora because we keep talking about Bruce, but he is such a big part of Kellie's game. And this, I think, really shows how she was able to keep her emotions in check because she knew how much disdain some people had for Bruce,
Mm-hmm.
but she was still willing to try to manage that and not make a decision based upon anything but what was good for her game, as opposed to, my God, he's like an albatross around my neck and he's dragging me down. But she realized the benefit. And so I think overall she did a really great job of managing what can be a very, that's a lot. That's going to weigh heavy on someone who is not only having to be mindful of the strategic component of their own game, they have to be mindful of someone else's,
Mm-hmm.
and then how that person is affecting that person over there. And I have to maintain that relationship between the two because it's going to be in my benefit. But nobody can know that that's what I'm doing. So I think, she did a really great job of keeping other people's emotions in check as well, and not just her own. So I have no issues with the way that she ended up handling this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. She literally had Bruce telling her how much he liked her and valued her, and she said he's a great person in real life, but she wanted him gone when his usefulness
Mm-hmm.
was up.
Yeah.
And I think she similarly would have cut anyone if she needed to. I just don't think that was an issue for her.
Right.
As a side thing, it's funny. I thought of this. We talk about, uh, you know, how many of Katura's confessionals and everything else that she's talking about has been about Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
In TV and film, there's something called the Bechdel test, which
Okay.
is how often are women not talking about men. And you obviously want women to be discussing things other than, and this is in scripted TV, you
Mm-hmm.
want the women on the show, in the movie, to be not just there to talk about the man.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're going to have to come up with a new one called like the Bruce-Dell test or something like that. Like how often is Katura not shown talking about Bruce? Because I'm sure she didn't only talk about Bruce, but that's all they're showing
Oh.
us.
But has someone counted all of her confessionals yet and determined if they are all truly
I
about
mean,
Bruce?
it's the internet. I'm sure someone has.
Someone has to have done
Yeah.
that, because I did say someone needs to do that, because it
Yeah.
really is every time she is sitting there having a confessional,
Mm-hmm.
it's about Bruce.
Yeah. So,
I just think it will be hilarious if, and this is, I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I've said before, I think that he's going to end up making the final three just because he's such a focal point, that she never gets to actually write his name down for a vote. And then she's going to be like sitting there going, well, I'm not writing his name down
yeah,
now.
exactly.
The one time
Exactly.
she has a chance to actually like write his name down, she refuses to. It'll be very interesting to see if that's what
Yes.
happens.
Yes. All right. Well, the fifth rule reminds players they need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. Now, obviously, Kellie had to pretend to be nice to Bruce all the time and was so good at it that he still kept calling her his number one while she called him her anchor. But what about everyone else? How was she with everyone else?
Well, I think the mere fact that everyone wanted to work with her
Mm-hmm.
speaks volumes also to this point of her ability to maintain social relationships with people. And she did say something that I thought was really interesting, and I'm trying to remember who exactly she referenced. And now oh, now this is going to frustrate me. But in one of her exit interviews, she did talk about how she actually differentiated between, I had a good relationship with this person, but not really a strategic relationship. And so
D
she
with D.
it was D. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I knew she had referenced it about someone. So she was obviously like building relationships, but then
Yeah.
understanding whether or not that was going to be a benefit to her game. D was a benefit for certain parts, but I mean, I really do think that overall, I mean, Kellie didn't need to pretend, but she also understood the type of relationship that she was creating with someone. It was like, okay, D is going to be a benefit for me for this part, but not
Mm-hmm.
so much for my strategy.
Right.
And, so I think overall, again, there was no struggle here, because she seemed to get along with everyone and she seemed to understand how that person would benefit her game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we already discussed it. There was clearly something that drew people to her. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to know exactly what that was from TV because usually this is one of those things that's hard to show. They show people talking about it instead.
Hmm.
Like, oh, I
Yeah.
have to go work with Kellie because everyone wants to work with Kellie. And
Mm-hmm.
it's one reason that I thought she was in such a good position to keep moving forward because different people kept saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be even more than we knew because, we found out about the Emily relationship. You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
Dee, and there was also Austin in the mix there. But in the end, that part was all for naught anyway.
Yeah. Sorry for your winner pick. Oh. So many tissues.
Yes. All right. Well, the sixth rule warns against being too much of a threat. We've been hinting at this.
I
Some
might have
more,
mentioned it.
some more strongly than others. That there were bigger reasons for the Reba Alliance to specifically go after Kellie instead of someone else like Jake. And here we are.
Don't be knocking Jake.
I'm not. I'm just saying he wasn't as big a threat.
Mm.
Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad. In this case,
Mm-hmm.
for him, it's good. For
Mm-hmm.
Kellie, it's not.
Mm-hmm. For Jessica, it's great.
Yeah. Now I just mentioned, how we've been hearing from other players about what a good position Kellie was in. And for several weeks now, again, I've been saying that was a positive sign for her. And it would have been if we'd been seeing something that the other players weren't seeing, but it seems that they were seeing it as much as we were. Yeah. More importantly, Austin and Drew in particular saw it.
Yeah.
And talked about how much power Kellie had and how everyone wanted to work with her. They felt Kellie was more of a real threat than Jake, which made sense considering many people consider Jake to already be a goner. So we don't need to worry about him. He's a goner in everybody's mind.
Right.
Plus, she said in interviews that Drew saw her set up the vote at the split tribal council. And we saw some of that last week as well. They even said that she was the brains behind Bruce, like a Sophie Coach situation. Now, I don't know that Bruce necessarily appreciated the comparison, but Sophie did on Twitter. So
yeah, she did. She did. Well, and I really do think that I was heading somewhere and then I just lost my train of thought. Oh gosh.
Oh, see,
Never
look,
mind.
you're like your winner pick in tribal council. You just start a thought and you can't finish it.
Listen, I think that some of that was a little bit of acting that he put
no
forth.
way.
So
No way.
I do. Where were we? What were we chatting about right
We're
before
talking
that?
about threat, being a
Yes.
threat. And
Yes. And so I think that we have to give some props to Drew just because I do think Drew had an accurate read on the situation and kind of made everyone else see what was transpiring here. And we've talked about this before because this idea that someone can be more of a threat to a particular person as opposed to everyone. And Drew has done such a great job with the relationship that he and Austin have formulated and also bringing in Emily. And now you've got Kellie, who's also trying to bring in Emily, right? And Kellie talked about this a little bit, that she thought she was creating a good relationship with Emily. And Emily has been so significant to Drew because she's been coming to him with information like, you can't say anything, but this is what's happening. So he knows that he's got Emily and he wants to maintain that. He's not worried about Bruce because, as you said, if it's a similar like Jake situation where people are like, we don't need to worry about him.
Yeah.
So then you start looking outwards and going, okay, well, how am I going to be affected? And if Kellie is coming after my people and she wants to take Emily from me, then I need to start looking at those people and those individuals. And she's certainly not a Reba, and she's not someone that I have formed a bond with. And so I think that overall, even though like she was a threat, I think, to so many people in the game, she was more of a threat to someone like Drew, who's really picking apart all of those little components. And he's like, man, I've got Austin and she's got Bruce, and she's going to look at me and she's going to be like, he's got Austin because he's doing exactly what I'm doing. That kind of like you start comparing your games and realizing she's going to be on to me. I got to get her before she can get me.
Yeah. And not just that, but we talked about the Dee situation with her and Dee being friendly and hanging out. And she said, we just liked each other. And I think that was pretty obvious to people around us. We'd braid each other's hair and do things like that. And so I think that is what ultimately really pushed it, because from that Reba line, seeing their people have another option is really scary.
Yes.
So I guess we could have mentioned this in Rule 2, but it wasn't really scheming too much. It was having fun which gave the appearance of being too
Yes.
close to someone. And so that was worrisome to Drew and Austin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now, another thing, though, that came up in several of Kelly's interviews was the idea of one threat acknowledging another and perhaps not wanting to go after them so they could be shields for each other. So, Kelly and Dee were among these two, and also Kelly and Austin.
Mm-hmm.
But I have, somewhat frequent messaging interactions with Survivor 43's James, and we really do plan to have him on here when schedules
We
allow.
do.
I
Yes, we do.
don't think it'll be this season because it's just not working out. But in the meantime, he pointed out something that I think is very interesting. He said to his mind, Kelly was indeed a threat, but not a shield type of threat. So in other words, she was a direct threat to some of their games, as you just talked about, but not the type of threat where she could be used to deflect someone. She wasn't a Jonathan or a Jesse. She wasn't going to automatically draw the shots. She was the type of threat who goes on to win the game.
Yes. Yeah. And
so
Drew is sniffing that out.
Right. And so she had to be stopped, not propped up. Some threats you can put up and be like, okay, I'm going to put you in front of me. And when they eventually aim at us, you'll go down and I can just move forward.
Right.
She wasn't like that. And Drew sniffed it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Drew is very good at this game as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's doing a fantastic job of picking up on things immediately and processing all. And I think we saw that even with one of the advantages that it was the amulet thing, when he read it, he was, well, then we have to vote both out. Right. Yeah. I mean, it was like, that was it. Like there was no question. And so, again, this is Kelly's part of that. And so that's going to be a benefit to Drew because, well, now we get her out and we're all set. And
right, and that's exactly
the sandwich component is complete,
yes,
right?
We're in Rule 7, which covers idols, advantages, and game mechanics. And yes, Kelly helped take Austin's sandwich from him.
That's right.
And and then on top of it, she got a sandwich at the auction and she couldn't even finish eating it. Come on.
Which is bullshit. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna say that right now. Like she's the last person to get anything, and then he's like, all right, Jeff's like, that's it, leave the food. What? No.
She did say in her interview that Jeff gave her extra time.
I know, and I appreciate that we learned that bit of information. Yes. However, I think if you spend that much money on a sandwich and a margarita, you get to take that shit with you and eat it. I'm sorry.
Well, what about Drew's bowl of candy? What was he supposed to do with that? He wasn't allowed to share. Was he supposed to chow down a whole bowl of candy in those few minutes?
And this is the problem with these rules. Like, I just feel like if you were going to provide them food like this, which also not for nothing, but how could those fries have been any good?
Okay,
like,
he
they're
did
just going to be
Jeff,
soggy and gross.
Jeff did say they had a little oven back there.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
I missed that.
Yeah, it was I think on fire.
Okay, because I was
they had
like,
a little fridge and they had a little oven.
Oh, thank God, because I'm thinking, I said something about the French fries, and someone's like, does that mean Emily just ate warm salami? And I'm like, probably, because ew. But yeah, I don't think that you should be limiting people. If you were going to say you can only eat the food while you sit here, well, then give them food that they can actually sit there and eat.
Yeah.
But then also give them a little extra time to be like, okay, go ahead and eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, she said she finished her margarita, which was her main concern, and then she ate as much of the sandwich as she could.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, anyway, we're of course mostly kidding about the sandwich. Mostly. I do think that Austin's sandwich revenge was pretty well taken care of when he got Jay out. But there was still that pesky amulet. And like you mentioned, getting Kelly out, it's now a second full-powered idol for him.
Yeah. Drew and Austin are sitting pretty.
Yeah. And Kelly told Dalton Russ, obviously the amulet is definitely a factor, but I think you can see from what was on the show, that was not really the primary reason I went right now. And yeah, I would agree. It's a factor, not the factor.
Yeah, it's one more thing to consider and to look at
Yes.
and go, okay, between Jake and Kellie, where do we get most benefit? Well,
Mm-hmm.
getting rid of Kellie gives us a huge benefit because now we have another idol.
Right.
So of course, that's where you're going to lean towards as opposed to Jake. So stop with the advantages. Sorry.
Yes. Now, a more important factor was something we discussed earlier, the way Bruce lost his vote in the auction. Kellie told
Mm-hmm.
Mike Bloom it was an absolute nail in the coffin for me or Jake, whoever it was going to be. I did not see that coming from the auction. And I really kept Bruce around for that reason, so that I would have his vote. And then when I need him the most, he's not there.
Yeah.
And yeah, this goes back to what we said earlier about there being no way she could foresee something like this happening.
Yeah.
And she shouldn't have to. Again, Jeff, get over your obsession from taking away votes.
Yeah. It needs to be a choice.
Yeah.
It like the shot in the dark, that's a choice. If
Right.
you play your shot in the dark, you don't get a vote. Okay. If you find a beware advantage, you could lose your vote. Okay. Again, it's all about choices. And that's what this game needs to be
Right.
about is the choice that you make as opposed to just some whim that like, oh, and by the way, whoever has the most money left, you don't
Yeah.
get to vote. Aha,
I
sorry,
mean, it's
that's
like
the way it's
when
gonna be.
it's like on Island of the Idols when Jamal found something hanging and he took it, and they're like, "Ha ha, you lost." I don't know. Did he lose his vote or he lost
Yeah, I don't even remember
something?
now.
And they were like, "Yeah, there's never anything. You don't ever get anything, for free on Survivor." It's like, yeah, you do all the time, actually.
Yeah, no,
But
you really do.
yeah, I mean, so he just randomly found it and was penalized for it.
Yeah.
Yay, you know.
No, I really do think that it needs to be there needs to be a choice. That's what it
hmm
needs to come down to. And unfortunately, this is one of those situations where you are taking away too much from the players, and that's what I think with so many of these advantages we continue to see is that the players are losing the ability to play the game. Kellie spent so much time formulating that relationship, building that relationship. So she would know I've got Bruce when I
hmm
need him at every moment. He's going to vote the way I need him to vote. And then that happens. And it's
Yeah,
not
and then
through anyone's choice.
Because Jeff pulls a random number out of a bag, it ends up with Bruce having the most money.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, people could argue, well, Bruce didn't choose to run through the woods and
But he didn't know
get
he was
more
going to
money.
lose his vote
Well,
for it.
right, exactly. And
You
again,
know?
if they don't know that this is what's happening, they're
Right.
just being told you're going to have an auction, but you need money. Go find money.
Right.
And maybe Bruce was like, I don't really care to eat, so that's fine. But if it had been, and by the way, whoever has the most amount of money, so that's interesting too. You think if they had known that ahead of time, people would have been like, well, then I'm just not going to go look.
Yeah, they all would have taken the Bruce route.
Right. I'm not going to find anything.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Well, we could move on from that and go into Appendix A, which is about the tribe keeping their end goals in mind when voting. And we talk, of course, about voting out the weak, then the strong, then the weak, then the strong. At this point in the game, it is still usually good to be picking off your strong opposition, unless, of course, you believe you need them as a shield. But as we discussed earlier, I don't think she was so much of a shield for the Reba people. Instead, she was just dangerous to them.
Yeah.
Or at least in particular, Drew and Austin.
Mhm.
And indeed, by getting rid of Kellie, they got another benefit because while Drew was dismissive of the Women's Alliance, this helped ensure it would never happen. And again, they wouldn't have to worry about losing Dee and Julie to it.
Yeah. And this is one of those situations where Drew is working through all of the permutations and determining what is going to be best for his game moving forward. So absolutely, that's all of those considerations.
Yeah. All right, well, we can go to Appendix B, which is the jury phase. I don't think anyone was particularly considering Kellie in the jury, but they were definitely considering they didn't want to face her in front of the jury.
Mm-hmm.
We already discussed how they saw her as a threat, and part of that threat could be winning it all. One thing I do want to point out is how she asked both Austin and Emily if this was them when she was being voted out in that tribal council.
Yeah.
And both said yes.
Yeah.
And I think they did this for two reasons. One, it would be silly not to at that point. Why lie?
Right.
2, to let Kellie know they were behind the move. So maybe they get credit for it if they make it to the
Yes.
end.
Yep.
We've seen in the new era, and we discussed it last week with Cassidy, that juries want to award the win to someone who can claim a big move, as much as we don't like it.
Right.
And so while both Emily and Austin said yes to this, and Drew at the very least could claim an equal, if not greater share,
Mm-hmm.
I suspect at least one of them will be in the end talking about this.
Well, and I do think that this is an interesting part of Survivor that seems to be more apparent, where people are willing to step up and say, "Yeah, I did it." And even Jake, when he was like, "Julie, it was me. You and I'll talk."
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people are more interested in what they've attempted to do or have done to be known, because
Mm-hmm.
they do feel like it's easier to argue in front of a jury something that they've seen or they've already learned of, as opposed to you sitting in front of the jury and going, "Hey, remember that thing that happened? 6 days ago," because we only have so many days
Right.
to Survivor at this point. Maybe you've forgotten, but it is easier when the jury has seen it and
Yeah.
already heard it, and there's confirmation there, because it's not like someone else is telling them, "Well, I did it." No, they're owning it in front of the jury, and the jury is seeing it.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, it's time to wrap things up. So, what are your final thoughts on Kellie?
Oh, Kellie. David Bloomberg lost his winner pick. Isn't that very sad? Oh, and listen, I will say, he looks so sad right now, to all of those who don't see him. I do take some pleasure in making it further than David Bloomberg with winner picks, because, as people should know at this point in time, I'm terrible at this whole prediction component. So I'm sorry, Kellie, that I am celebrating just a bit, because I'm bad at something. So that's on me. But I will say that Kellie's game was one that I think people would strive to want to play when they come out to Survivor. And I don't think that she intended that to happen. I do think that she has a natural component about herself that does draw people in, that makes people want to trust her, work with her, just learn things about her, even if it's not in a strategic component, but still building a relationship with her. So there's just a likability factor that
Mm-hmm.
exists with Kellie. And then she's able to turn that into a strategy as part of her game. She really knows how to read people. And I think she's one of those interesting players that has an innate quality, if I'm saying that correctly,
Mm-hmm.
to figure out what the person she's speaking to needs, and that's something that I don't think a lot of people are really good at, because you have to remember that Survivor, you can't come across as selfish when you're playing this game, right? It can't be about you. So Kellie can't sit there and go, "No, we need to keep Bruce because of me." She needs to make the other person understand why they need to keep Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
And she did a really great job doing that throughout this game. In every conversation she had, was, how are we going to convince that person that this is the best thing for their game, as opposed to just me wanting it for my game. Unfortunately, Drew sniffed her out and realized this is exactly what she was doing, because Drew's doing the same damn thing. So maybe at some point, someone will also say, "Hey, you know that thing we called Kellie out on? Drew's doing it too. Maybe we should call Drew out." The problem is, Drew comes with a couple of idols by way of Austin. So that's going to be an interesting little side note to be mindful of. But overall, I think Kellie's game was a really impressive one. She was truly a threat in many ways, both strategically, physically, and socially. She really had the trifecta. And so I do think that your choice of winner pick, though a smart one, unfortunately, Drew got in your way, because he realized too, this girl is a threat to win. She's got to go before she decides to take me out. So sorry, David Bloomberg, but your winner pick is not going to make it to the end this time. And so with that, Kellie went home. So sorry, David Bloomberg, but your winner pick's gone.
You're not
Mine's
sorry.
not.
Don't lie. You're not sorry.
I'm really not.
Yeah. See.
So I'm allowed to celebrate. I've done so terrible. So terribly. It's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Well, our friend Adam Klein was on the post-show podcast with
Mm-hmm.
Rob, and he said that he hopes Kellie doesn't think she was voted out because of being close to Bruce, rather because she was the one who most seemed like she could rally against Reba. But it's really some of both, plus a few other things. Yes, Drew and Austin were worried about Kellie as a threat in the game, and it's clear that they were right to be concerned. But they arrived at her by going down the ladder, starting at Bruce, passing Jake, and getting to her. It's very possible that if Bruce had been an available option one way or another, like you mentioned, we'd have just spent the last hour and a half talking about him instead. We don't know. But Bruce won immunity while also losing his vote, the very vote Kellie was keeping him around for. But remember that blaming this on her not voting out Bruce previously is hindsight bias, pure and simple. Meanwhile, Jake gave up his vote because he was convinced that he was the target and went into desperation mode. Kellie was probably already a concern in the back of certain minds, but this opened the path up for at least Drew and Austin. It solved a lot of problems for them. It obviously removed a bellow, and indeed, probably the most important bellow, as she was the one holding it all together. It took away an option for Dee and Julie in case they were considering it. And of course, it gave Austin a second immunity idol. In combination, all of these positives for them coming together was just too good to pass up. They saw their opportunity and they jumped on it. They even moved past the idea that keeping Kellie would be a shield because, as we discussed earlier, I don't think she really was a shield. She was a sword. The Reba just disarmed Bello, and that is why Kellie lost.
Too bad for you, David Bloomberg.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, before we get to our predictions, let me remind everyone that the rules we just went through are available in poster form, poster on a t-shirt form, and checklist form.
That's right.
So the best way to get revenge on Jessica for mocking me for losing my winner prediction is to make her do a lot of work by ordering lots of posters. So just go to robhaswebsite.com/YXLostFeed, scroll down to the poster, order it, and she will have to run around getting them all mailed out.
That'll be lovely. And maybe I'll even throw in a little note that David Bloomberg was wrong.
Oh, there you go. Special.
Oh my goodness. Good stuff.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes. Where else could people find notes from you and me?
Oh, yes. So I am on Twitter at Jessica Lewis 89. I'm also on Instagram, Jessica Lewis 6789. Although I just usually steal your stories and add them to my own. So thanks for that, David Bloomberg. Because as some people have probably heard, David Bloomberg is all over social media, so much so that he has an entire page dedicated to all of the locations that you can find him. Now, I must say, David Bloomberg, I noticed something last week about this page that you display.
Okay.
The actual Linktree address is not on the page.
No, it's in the URL above. I mean, you can't see it when you share a screen. When you share a web page, you can't actually see it. And it wouldn't make sense when you're going to the website to have the URL there because that's you already know the URL because you got there. So it's
but that's so I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. It's Linktree/David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE in Linktree. Or you could find me on most text-based social media like Twitter and Blue Sky is at David Bloomberg. And on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram is at David Bloomberg TV. On those video platforms, have been posting 3 or 4 videos per day. Big Brother's over, so probably less 4, more 3. But still, there's still lots of stuff that I'm posting about because there's U.S. Survivor. There's Survivor UK. There's The Traitors Canada. There's House of Villains. And, who knows what else there could be. I thought that I might get something out of the allegedly James Bond related reality show on Prime, but allegedly is the word doing most of the work there, because the only
Mm,
thing that has any similarity to James Bond in is they use some James Bond music, and it's some of the same producers.
mm,
Otherwise, don't even bother watching that show. It's terrible. But shows that are good are that, uh, you know, the ones that I do talk about, and of course, podcast about. So a couple days after our last podcast, Why Sifu and Caleb Lost, I finished up Big Brother Why Blank Lost podcasting with Ovi Kabir
mhm,
by, of course, discussing why Jag won and Matt Bowie Jane and Felicia lost.
mhm.
So be sure to catch up on that if you haven't already. And then on top of that, I'm recapping the Traders Canada at the Tradar podcast, and that's spelled Traidar, where you can find that wherever you normally get your podcasts or on YouTube as audio. And I'm also podcasting at that same place about Survivor UK, and my co-host is from the UK. He's Scottish. He has never seen Survivor before. So it's very interesting. Like, we had a discussion, like, he's like, I understand that at some point these tribes will come together, but I don't know how. And so, there are just these, we discussed a swap, but he didn't want to know about the merge. He wants to experience it fresh, just as we did our first time viewing. So
Interesting.
it's all very interesting. Yes.
Well, you are just a social media guru,
Yes. Yes, I am. I
which I find so incredibly fun and amusing about you.
Yes, I know you do.
I
Um,
love it.
yes. All right. Well, we can get to our predictions. And the preview tells us that Jeff's obsession with taking away votes continues and gets worse,
Mm,
because
yeah.
he says 3 people will lose their vote. Come on, Jeff.
I know.
Seriously?
Yeah. It's not okay. It's
No.
not okay.
Let them vote. It's what the game is about.
I know.
Um,
I know. Yeah.
Now, when he says this, they appear to be broken up into teams of 3. So either those teams play against one another and the one in last place all lose their vote, or they compete within their individual groups of 3 and the last place in each group loses their vote.
Mm,
Either way, pretty much impossible to predict what will happen. But it would seem like the Reba will have the votes to start rolling over the bellow, especially since I just don't think there's any way Katurah and Bruce ever get on the same page, even if their
mm,
game lives literally depend on it.
mm-hmm.
So even if a couple of the Reba lose their votes, they might still be okay, because they could still get Bruce on board with voting Katurah and Katurah on board with voting Bruce potentially.
Yeah. Will we
That
finally see a Bruce Katurah vote?
maybe, but even if there is, I don't know that it'll matter, because Bruce has his idol and he
Yeah.
would be a fool not to play it, presuming he
At
doesn't win
this point,
immunity again,
yeah. At this point, yeah. I don't
So
disagree.
I'm going to say Bruce is safe no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Adam predicted on that podcast we mentioned that maybe Katurah gets voted out because the Reba knows there's no way Bruce would give her the idol.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, there's also no way he gives it to Kendra or Jake either
Yeah.
at this point in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's keeping that.
Yeah. So the Reba can pick, if, presuming the votes don't come out too wacky, they can pick who they want to go. I think they will know that if they keep Katurah in, that will cause continued tension with Bruce. Jake is already head spinning, not knowing which way is up. They don't need to worry
Mm-hmm.
about him.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to target Kendra.
Me too.
Ah.
Yes, I definitely, and actually, I think she was my pick last week as well, if
Mm.
I'm remembering correctly. But I think the thing with Kendra too is that she was sobbing when Kellie got
Yes.
voted out, right? So if she's sitting in the final 3, she has a fan on the jury.
Oh, yeah.
And, she's got Kellie sitting there. So I really do think that, and Kendra is someone who I mean, she's fun, she's
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable, and I feel like she's not necessarily someone who is a concern strategically, but I do think that it's a concern when you get down to it. Like, you start looking at who's going to be sitting on the jury, and if you know that someone sitting over there is probably more
Right.
likely to vote for this person, well, now that person becomes an issue for whoever else is potentially sitting next to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I agree. My pick as well.
Okay. I wanted to
So
pick Jake. I just couldn't bring myself to do
I
it.
know you wanted to, but Jake's winning. So
Jake,
ha.
Jake is not winning. I'm sorry.
Jake's
Jake, Jake, I really like you a lot, but you're not winning. Well, I mean, he
Jake's
already knows
winning.
what the outcome is.
I
So,
know
yeah.
Jake's winning.
Okay.
So Jake,
Um,
do me a favor, and like when I'm right, please
you're
rub
like
it in David Bloomberg's face.
asking for a cameo ahead of time, basically.
No, no,
Like
no, no. I want him
a
to. I
free
want.
cameo from him saying to me, saying, "Ha ha, I won. Jessica
Oh
was
wait.
right."
Okay. I love this idea. I
Yeah,
didn't. I
yeah,
wasn't even going down that path. But
yeah.
listen, if you are doing cameo and you're up for it, I think that would be good.
Okay. So, all right. Well, as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. You can get access to all the special podcasts that are put out just for patrons. And when Rob isn't talking directly to everyone, there's the Facebook groups and the Discord with a great community of people. Um, so, of course, you also help support shows like ours and everything on the
Mm-hmm.
network by becoming
Mm-hmm.
a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron or click on the link at our YX Lost feed page. Also, make sure you're subscribed to all the reality TV Rehap Ups podcasts by going to robhasawebsite.com/Rehap Ups feed and selecting your podcast service of choice. You will, of course, find us, the B&B, Shannon Gus's Survivor International, and also podcasts on a number of other shows and topics from reality TV and, you know, things that are happening on Netflix and crime shows and you name it, it's there.
Well, listen, and we should thank everyone who does all of the incredible work on all of the rehab ups that you were just talking about and all of the editing that goes into that. Scott St. Pierre, thank you so much for the work that you do and everyone that works with you, not just for the editing that you do on this podcast, but all of the content. There is so much content that is being put out. It's insane that Rob is able to keep up with all of it. So please, thank you to everyone and continue to support Rob and his vision. I think it's really been incredible that so many people have. So thank you for everyone who does all of the incredible work there. Thank you to Will from America for our theme song. We truly appreciate it. And David, thank you for letting me gloat just a little bit. I couldn't help myself. I couldn't help myself.
I know.
It was too much fun.
I know you couldn't.
You know, I even had a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you're going to have a really fun podcast this time because David Bloomberg's winner pig went home and yours didn't." So thanks. I'm sorry, Kelly. Kelly, I still think you're amazing, but yeah, thanks, David. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you, Jessica, for another great episode. I do want to mention to listeners and viewers, next week is, of course, Thanksgiving. So we will be a couple days later than usual, but we should still have the podcast out by late Sunday night, early Monday morning type of time frame there, we believe. So we will see you then, or, of course, you can hear me in several other places before then. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.